I don't think we're going to do much learning in Madreigas Ha'adam right now because we're going to make a shtickle akdama. So I don't need this form right now. Let's see. First of all, I want to tell you that I wanted to start these sessions earlier after Pesach, but my wife severely hurt herself on Pesach. She fractured her spine. She's in intense pain, and she can't be left alone. And I don't have, meanwhile, the wherewithal to cover for her. So I haven't been here. I've been taking care of her 24/7. And I miss Hashem should get well. We'll be fine. We'll continue. So, but these Vaadim will be intermittent, at least in the beginning, maybe throughout till the end of this month. That's number one. Number two, I want to tell you why I hesitate, yet I think we should learn Bitachon. When we were Bachar in Lakewood, 3 of us, or 4 of us, I don't remember. I remember myself and somebody else. It might have been 3 or it might have been 4, I don't remember. So I asked Rosh Yeshiva, Zechron Rav if he would make a separate Seder with us, besides the Shir and the Torah and the Gemara and everything we learn all the time, he would make a Seder with us to some other Sefer. So he agreed. And we would meet Thursday night. I think it was after 11 o'clock. Around that, he went to bed 11, so it must have been after 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock was Ma'ariv. My side, I remember. 10:30 maybe. Going back half a century. And but it was that time of night. And he, what do you want to learn? We said to him, whatever she wants to learn with us. So he chose to learn Shar Bitachon in Shar Bitachon, not the Shar Bitachon, Shar Bitachon. Come back to me soon. Thank you very much. Now, and most of it, there was very few lines were covered. Most of it was, he told stories about godless and Bitachon from people that lived before. And which teaches us that Bitachon has to be learned from, like many things, have to be learned from stories and from the experiences of other people. I was in Pesach. I was Pesach away. I was in the first days. I was by one of my children, and there was a bris from somebody who davened in the same next to me, in the same place where I davened in Yontif. They announced the bris, and I don't know the person very well. I know his father-in-law. I know his father-in-law. Brother-in-law. So I decided I'm going to the bris. It was only 2 blocks away. And as I'm going, a certain person with 2 people walking opposite me. One of them was the doctor's name. Again, I remember. He's the father-in-law of David Kalish. And he had a young man with him. A young man is older than you, twice your age probably. And he said, here's Rabbi Perr. Rabbi Perr, please, you have to speak with this guy. And I didn't end up going to the bris. I ended up sitting on my son's porch and talking with the guy. So this young man, who was a Leib, of course, this young man has a terrible tzara. He has a family. His oldest child is a son of 12 or so, 12, 13 maybe, I don't remember, 6th grade. Impossible child. He has all kinds of problems, ADHD and this and that, all kinds of other things. He can't sit in the classroom, he can't this, he can't that. He's bright, you understand, but the house is absolutely charav. The Shabbos table is charav. He beats the other children, his younger sisters. They can't control him. And that's why he came to speak to his doctor about. The doctor did me a favor, gave it to me. And I asked him the first question, which should be always the first question. Does he go to a shrink to take the child to a professional? So it's less a that he took the child to several very qualified professionals. And one said to do this, one said to do that, different things. And he was really beside himself with tsar, I can't tell you. Can't imagine. I mean, if you're a parent in Rahman Islam, you have this kind of a problem. The pain is unimaginable otherwise. So I told him 2 pieces of advice. I'd listen to him. First, you have to listen to a person. You have to hear him out. Not because you're going to hear something new. In the first 30 seconds that you hear him, you know right away what the problem is. And you understand it. But the person has to get it off his chest. So the first thing you can do for him is to listen to him. A lot of it is repetitious, and most of it is no chiddush at all. Because especially a person like myself who's had experience with youngsters, and as soon as you tell me he has this is his problem, this is his problem. I don't have to tell me more than that, I understand. There has to be a him. I told him 2 pieces of advice. I think they're worth hearing. First piece of advice was that don't run to different therapists. Take one of the therapists who has a good reputation, who you heard is good, who you feeling when you met them that they're good, and then stick with that therapist from beginning to end. Don't go to another therapist. And that's what he's been doing. Because therapy doesn't work right away, and a solution, especially in a case like this, does not happen right away. And each one has their own approach, and probably each one works if you stick to it. But if you run from one to the other, it's not going to work. So pick out one who's recognized, accepted in the community. They all talk about the different therapists. Each one has a reputation. Pick out one. You went over that one already. Stick with their advice from beginning to end, even if it doesn't look like it's working. So that was one thing I told him that would be helpful. And then I told him another piece of advice. I said, you and your wife have to work on Bitachon. You have to learn a little Bitachon. That's 15 minutes a week. But you should not make a Seder together, because you'll never keep it. He said, how did you know? I tried many times to make a Seder with my wife. I said, because I tried many times myself. Seder with your wife never works. Because each side forgives the other one for not keeping their side. It's only with a stranger that you're ashamed not to keep up the Seder. So you do it. So you have to find a friend to learn with you 15 minutes a week with a Seder Kavua, and your wife has to find a friend of hers to learn 15 minutes Seder Kavua. The next question is what to learn. So I said, I don't think you should learn Chavos Alavos. I like that. I said, why? I said, first you should learn something in English. So Chavos Alavos is translated, of course. So you should learn something in English and you should not learn Chavos Alavos. I said, why? I said, because Chavos Alavos starts off talking about the advantages of Bitachon over alchemy. Now, alchemy was a forerunner of chemistry, and it was baloney. It was an effort to turn lead into gold, which people claimed they could do, and all the kings wanted gold, and they supported these guys who were busy. It doesn't happen overnight, you have to support me for at least 35 years with my family, my children, my grandchildren. But we're getting there, we're making progress. That's what alchemy is. So Cheres Alvovis, indeed, 1,000 years ago, when that was the in science of the times, he said it was sheker, the whole thing, alchemy. We deserve credit. He deserves, we should stand up for him, that he recognized in the times that he lived that alchemy was sheker, and he says it's sheker. Nevertheless, since people believed in alchemy, so he starts off the Pshar of Bitachon, discussing the advantages of Bitachon over alchemy. And though he says it's sheker, but nevertheless, if he talks about such a thing that in our eyes is a shtus, which it is, so it becomes very difficult to relate to the Sefer, let's call it that, because of this beginning. It's a shame that it is that way, but it is that way. You need the Sefer. You want the Sefer to talk your language. When he's talking about alchemy, it doesn't talk your language. Just the same reason I said you should learn something in English. Because Hebrew, how well versed we are in Hebrew. But Hebrew is still a foreign language, and it's foreign to our hearts. How much we understand it. How much time we spent understanding Hebrew and understanding the nuances of the language, the beauty of the language and what it's saying, and the iyunim that are there, the double meanings that only Lashon Kodesh has. B'seif Kosef, they're speaking in a foreign language to us. And you have to learn in your own language. Which I said, there are many go into a foreign shop and look around for something on Bitachon in English. There are a lot of good things around. And learn it. The reason I told him this was not because it's going to solve the problem of his child, because it might mitigate the problem of himself. It didn't solve it, but it will mitigate the problem of himself. Because there's two problems. One problem is the child, which is very hard to cope with. And that you need a professional, and you have to stick with the same professional for a year, 2, for 3 years even, whatever it is, until finally a solution, until finally things get better, and they say a solution. The other problem is yourself. How do you put up with this? You know what it means to lose your temper? And what happens to your own self-respect when you lose your temper? And what happens to your wife? What happens to your family? How everybody's destroyed by this? Whole family's destroyed. What about the other children? Well, there's only one thing going on in the family. And that's this kid. There are no other kids. There's nothing else going on in the family. There's just this kid. Morning, noon, and night. That's all the parents have taken, absorbed by, not because they love him more, because that's their problem. And the person's torn up, that's his life. His wife is torn up, that's her life. And it's not happy between them. It's not happy between the other child. So what can be done about that problem? And that problem, of course, therapy would help also. But you should begin with Bitachon. You should try it a little bit. Find out that there's a God in this world. And he runs the world. And he takes care of people. And you can leave it to him to do a little bit also, at least. It makes you breathe easier. And if you get it into you, you'll start to see wonderful things in your life. So today is 22 days in the Eimer. So this is like 22 days ago, the story that I'm telling you. It's pretty fresh. Pretty much straight out of the oven, 21 days ago. So, it's something that, as Messiah Sherm says in Zakdoma, that the ta'elis that comes from the Sefer, he says, only comes from Chazorah. You don't get it from one time. And I've taught Bitachon and learned Bitachon a number of times. And I need a little bit myself. Everybody needs it. A little refresher course it's called. All the professionals today that have licenses from the state have to take continuing education credits. A doctor, a social worker, they all have to take courses every year, take a certain amount of credits, continuing education after they got their degree and their license. And the reason is because you have to be fresh in your subject. And it's just natural that a person forgets, as the Mesilas Yesharim says. It's natural that things cool off and that we weaken. Now, I've told you a story a number of times. Rabbi Aharon told us stories about previous door. Let me tell you a story about our door. So a woman called me up from out west. There aren't many people in that city, and if I tell you where the city is, maybe we'll find out who the person is, so I decided not to tell you where it is. He went to Yeshiva for a number of years. And he bought a business. He's a very chosher person. Baruch Hashem. Moved out to this town and took a responsibility for Yeshiva there and other things, raising money for them, and became a leader in the community. Everybody looks up to him. He's really special. He needs a parnasa also, don't forget. So he bought a business for somebody, a woman, and it was a lot of money to buy a business. So he had to borrow $300,000, besides he put his little money he had into it himself, he borrowed $300,000 to buy the business, besides what he put in himself. And lo and behold, as happens all the time, it happened here in Rockaway, but at another time at the Yeshiva bought a business, and it turned out that people only sell businesses that they know are no good and is going into the ground. Sometimes they even have 2 sets of books, believe it or not. One set that shows profits, and the other set that shows realities. And they show you the set that shows profits. I can tell you several stories about that, but it's not again now. So I don't know what happened with him, but he bought a business, and then there was nothing left of the business. It was worthless. And he owed a lot of money. His wife called me up. I haven't spoken to him. I don't know how long. His wife called me up from out of town, and she said, Rabbi Perr, my husband's walking around terribly depressed. He owes a lot of money. He's just crushed. So I said to her, could you please speak to him? So I said to her, can I say that you called him, that you told me that you called me and asked me to speak to him, because otherwise he thinks I'm going to say I called him out of the blue, suddenly out of town. Can I say, yes, you can say I called you, and you can, to speak to him about the thing, and that you know about it. So I did so. So I called him up, and I heard his eyes got klapped, and his kishkas knocked out. There's only one thought in his mind over and over again. $300,000, $300,000, $300,000. I'll get a job, but I'll never pay that money back. I'll get a job, I need the money to live on. Let's say I get a $100,000 job. I have a family to support. I'm going to back $300,000. I'll pay back $3 a year. What's going to happen? How can I do this? He's a very honest person. He can't just walk out. And beside that, I know legally, he didn't borrow me personally, not as a corporation, but whatever it is, corporation also for $300,000. One thing is, he's dead. I called him up and he listened to him again. Like I listened to his wife, like I listened to the other guy. And I'm like, what? Like you have to listen to everybody with a sir. I said to him, I hear. He said, are you very busy now? He says, I have nothing to do. The business is dead, it's gone. He said, I want to ask you something. Maybe you can do it. I said, what? He said, maybe you'll translate the chapter on Bitachon in the Madreigas Ha'adam. The section on Bitachon in Madreigas Ha'adam. He said, after all, you have a very good English. You write well. And somebody told me that he'll print it if it gets out in a good job done. He'll print it on condition that I agree it's a good job. So he'll publish it. I said, maybe you'll do that. You're not busy now. So the guy said, I'll tell you the truth, Rebbe. I know you used to teach Bitachon in Yeshiva, but you know I never came to the Vaad. I said, I know, I remember you never came to the Vaad. I said, that doesn't matter. We need a translation anyway, and you should be a good translator. He said, you know what, I'll look it over with my wife. Maybe we'll sit down and do the job together. This was about 2 years ago, in the middle of the winter. I was in Camp Benos, as you know. Been there, unfortunately, for how many years? Hiding out in my hideout, that you don't know about, but it's a good place. And he shows up way out west, all the way up to Camp Benos. He came up specially to bring me the translation. Big smile on his face. How are you doing? Great. What's happening with your problem? The problem? It'll be good. Well, I'll tell you what happened with the problem. I don't really know. I didn't want to reawaken the wound or ask him too much. But I can tell you what I think happened with the problem. When a person has a problem that's festering on his mind, and we're all like this. So the person tied up in a knot, he can't see a way out of the problem even if it's right in front of him. He's so tied up. Did you hear that? I want you to know that for life. If a person has a problem, say the person gets tied up in a knot, and there's no way out of that problem, and he's going to die from the problem. Because there's no door out of the problem. If the problem is loosened, and somehow it becomes easier, then he says, oh, I could do this and this and this. Or I could do this and then do that. And then a third thing. Oh. That's what happens. Which is what happened to him. What exactly happened, I don't know. So he told me the problem is no longer a problem. I said, you pay off the money? He said, no. We'll pay it off. Where do you get it from? From translating Sha'ar Bitachon. I want him to learn Sha'ar Bitachon, he would never learn it. You understand? Vergeet learn Sha'ar Bitachon, after all. Now I'm going to try to make up with Bitachon. But translating Sha'ar Bitachon, give him a job. Oh, that's something that you don't have to have Bitachon, you have to learn Bitachon. You just have to translate Bitachon. You have to read the words and not translate it, but... I told you the story before. So I said to him, how's your wife? The one who called me up. He said, she's on another planet completely. I said, what do you mean? She's on another planet. I said, I have Bitachon, but she's in a different world. I'm running the show. I said, tell me, what are you talking about? He said, I'll tell you 2 examples. We had my brother-in-law by us with all his kids before Pesach. The kids made a churban in the house. And they left to go home for Pesach, leaving us the churban. Naturally, that's what visitors do, don't they? And we faced the reality, but our cleaning lady said to my wife, I'm sorry, Mrs. My mommy is sick in Guatemala, wherever. I have to go home and take care of her, and she quit Erev Pesach. And my wife was about to have a collapse. Very upset. And she said to me, okay, I'm going upstairs. And I said to her, what are you going to do upstairs? She said, I want to talk to Hashem. She was upstairs, she came down. I said, what did you say to Hashem? I said, Hashem, gotta help me. I can't do this. I trust you. There's no way I can do this. I have to have Yontif in the house. That's it. It's your problem. She's talking to me, said, and there's a knock on the door. We opened the door. There's a little lady standing there. She said, maybe you need some help for clean house for holiday. While she's talking. Is that a different planet? And let me tell you how we got the house. So how'd you get the house? I said, well, we were in an apartment that was so small, we couldn't live there. The kids were squeezed in. I don't remember, he told me a number in the bedroom. You couldn't live there. So my wife said, I have Bitachon, we're going to have a house. I said, what are you talking about? Bitachon, Hashem's going to give us a house. Bitachon. The Shabbos night. She walked out of the house and took a walk. Walked out of her apartment, took a walk. She came back 15, 20 minutes later with a piece of paper. She wrote a telephone number on it. She says, here, call this number. She passed the house. It said house for sale with a number on it. I called the number. The guy said, what? I just hung up the sign. Right after Shabbos, I hung up the sign. That's the house we're in. He said, is that a different planet, Rebbe? Now, this is from one person. I have letters from people in Israel who write stories that happened with them. Unbelievable. There's a guy in Lakewood. I'll tell you his name. He was in Yeshiva, and there also, unfortunately, he calls himself Mookie. His last name is Diamond. Mookie Diamond. His real name is Mordechai. I never called him Mookie. He should be called Rebbe Mordechai. He has stories of Bitachon in his own life that are incomprehensible. Incomprehensible. Incomprehensible, I should say. Like incomprehensible. Incomprehensible. Can't believe the stories he has in his own life. He lives with Bitachon. So I'm not telling you stories from the old generations, which were true too. I'm telling you stories about people that, one of whom you know, Mookie, or Mordechai better, and somebody whose name I don't want to tell you because I don't want to tell you about the $300,000. It's somebody else's private business. I have no right to tell you stories about other people's finances. But there are many other stories. Of this sort, and I think that, as I said, intermittently we'll be learning when I have the koyach and the ability to learn with you. It happens when my granddaughters came now to stay with my wife. They came, and I'm free till about 4 o'clock. So I came to Yeshiva. So they came to and after mincha, and 4 have 2 hours. So I decided to say about. It's hard to say about Bitachon. Why Bitachon? First of all, some of you asked me for it. And second of all, I would like to refresh myself. I've gone through many things in my life. Difficulties. You shall also. I'm sorry to tell you that. I'm sorry to tell you that. I wish I could tell you life is a bowl of cherries. But there are pits in the cherries too. I don't wish it on you. I just know it. Not because I have a Ruach HaKodesh. Because I've seen it. I've gone through a lot of things in life. But Hashem, which has been kind to me, he brought all kinds of things on me. Yaser, Yastruni, Koah. I'm always not somebody. I've had Yisurim, but I have not died. It's marvelous, unbelievable. I'm still alive. I'm alive. What else do you have to be besides alive? And I've opened many times this Sefer in times of great need. In times when I was tied up in a knot and couldn't see a door. I couldn't believe there was a door. This is an old Madreigas Ha'adam, which the guys love. I always tell over that, look how worn out it is. It was a new one when I got it. I tell out, that when I used to touch the cover, I felt under the pebbly surface under my fingers. As soon as I touched the cover, I used to feel, it's on the way. Before I even opened it up. It's on the way. Now, about Bitachon, I want to tell you that there are many shittas in Bitachon, not many shittas. Different shittas, I should say. And really they're the same shitta. But they're talking about 4 different people, in different matzavim. And even for the same person in different matzav. Let me repeat that. They all believe and understand the same thing. The bottom line is the same. But they are all the different shittas are writing about Bitachon for different people. One is writing for Gedolim, and one is writing for Balabatim. Or they're writing about the same person, but in a different matzav. Sometimes a person has strength in Bitachon, and it's unwavering Bitachon. And sometimes a person is weak in their Bitachon. The greatest of us is weak in their Bitachon. And they feel weak. But one thing I have to tell you, that there's 2 extremes in Bitachon that everybody agrees to. The lowest level is that you have to know that Rebbe Hashem runs the world. Every Jew is mechuyev to know that there's a Rebbe Hashem and he runs the world. And you want to know something? I think that every Jew knows that. It doesn't mean they don't. They know it every second. I think every Jew, every irreligious Jew knows that. Every Jew married to a shiksa knows that. Every Jew that's an atheist knows that. Every atheist knows that. Deep inside us, we all know that we as Jews are a miracle. They can only be explained by the fact that the Creator wants us to be here. Everybody knows that. I don't say to tell it to other people. I don't say to even acknowledge it to themselves. But they know that. And every Frumiyat is mechuyev to know that there's a Rebbe Yishlo and he runs the world. That is Yesoid HaYesoidus. It's not in Bitachon only, it's basically the mitzvah Aseh Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Asher Hotzi Sicha Meretz Mitzrayim. I run the world, I took it out of Egypt. That's what it says in that mitzvah. And that every Jew is included. There's no excuses for that. You got to say it with your mouth, even if it doesn't calm your heart. You have to say it with your mouth. And if you say it often enough, it'll calm your heart. It'll penetrate deeply into you. That's the lowest level of Bitachon. The highest level of Bitachon is that if you have Bitachon, the Rebbe Shalom will make it happen. Did you hear that one? If you have Bitachon, he will make it happen. That's the Sefer Madreigas. But if you have Bitachon, he will make it happen. And in between, there are various different fluctuations and levels. For instance, the common thing is Gamzu l'Toiva. That doesn't mean he's going to make it happen. But it means I know that somehow it's good. That even the evil things are good. Whatever Shabbos does is good, although the good is hidden. But to know that and believe that, but I'm not being able to change things. But I know that it's good. Somewhere in my mind I know it's good. In the back of my mind. And with Hashem's help and with my Hishtadlus, I can move that thought from the back of my mind to the front of my mind. That it's good. It turns out to be good. It's good in the next world, but it always is good. That it's good. That it will turn out to be good. And sometimes it's good in the next world, but it always is good. That it's good. That it will turn out to be good. And sometimes it will turn out to be good in the next world. But it always is good. It always is good. It always is good. Now, Rabbi Kiva learned by Nochem Ish Gamzu. And they called him Ish Gamzu. But he didn't say Gamzu, he said Gamzu L'Tayva. So why do they call him Nochem Ish Gamzu L'Tayva? Well, maybe it's too long a name, you know. Oh, he wants to have so many names. Guys, Avram, Berish, Doiv Berish, Menachem Mendel. Has 5 names, they don't call him Abi. So maybe short Nochem Ish Gamzu to Nochem Ish Gamzu instead of Nochem Ish Gamzu L'Tayva. Why don't you just call him Nochem Ish Gam? It's really shortening it. Why not call him Nochem Zu L'Tayva? What is Nochem L'Tayva? But there's a Gavaldik Aliman in Gam Zu L'Tayva. That was his Chiddush. His Chiddush was to understand from past experiences that Gam Zu L'Tayva. Not just to say that Kol Ma'adav Rachman L'Tava, everything he does is good. But in my own life, I've seen certain things that I thought were awful, or whatever, and Gam Zu L'Tayva. This will be good also, just like the other thing was L'Tayva. And that was his teaching, and that's why it's called Nochem Ish Gam Zu, without even the word L'Tayva. Because the Ikar Chiddush was the Gam Zu. And we say it ourselves many times. We say, for instance, in mention the verse Bracha, Utuvay HaGadoil, Tumid L'Chosar Lon, Al Yechsar Lon, mussar. Remember those words? Anybody say it recently? Utvagodoil, talmid lo ychas alonu. And therefore, al yachs alonu. That's gamzu. It turned out good. I had what to eat all the time. I judged from the past what the future will be. I don't have a parnasa, but I always had what to eat. So I will always have what to eat. And I said, I will hold bossa. Gamzu l'toiv. And there isn't a person in the world, even at your young age, who can't think of some experience that they were sure was a tragedy that turned out to be it was a good thing. Or it wasn't a tragedy, at least. For instance, the last time you were sent to Rosh office, and he gave you his steely hard look, which he practices. And he said, you did what? And you got out alive. So you say, Gamzu l'toiv. Was he better our places? So Gamzu l'toiv. I think it's fun scaring kids. It's my job. So I think that's a very good thing to start with on your own. Just try to think of some things that you thought were just terrible. And it turned out that it was not terrible. And maybe you have some things that turned out to be very good. It was dafki good. It was dafki good. Maybe you haven't had long enough life experience at this point to have such cases. But dafki was good. And it was good because the Baruch Hashem really wants good for you. And that's the sharish of Bitachon. The Alter of Novardok had the most extreme teachings in mussar of all the mussar people. I don't know if I shouldn't say that, but it was contemporaries, I should say, as compared, let's say, to Slobodka or to other places. And this discussion one, but he was very successful, by the way. Successful as a mechanech. Successful in teaching it. He had the most extreme shittas in mussar. And other places had every yeshiva was made, except for Mir and Volozhin, but every yeshiva was founded by the mussar movement. All of them. Every single yeshiva ever heard of was founded by the mussar movement. But in most cases, the mussar was light, L-I-T-E, like it says, Bud Light. You see those trucks, Bud Light, we drink any of it? Bud Light. But beside Bud Light, there's also Budweiser. I don't know if you get wiser when you drink it, but it's Budweiser. And his was Budweiser. It was the real stuff that goes down. That delicious bitter taste. Budweiser. So the mussar that he teaches is very strong, uncompromising. But I think that if you hear things that are strong, you will you will come out light. But if you hear things that are light, you may come out with nothing. And you may come out strong. And Mordechai Diamond is somebody who came out strong. He's not the only one. Many, many others. We're reading the Sefer with mussar Vaad. Came out strong. And the guy out of town came out strong. So, the netter, as circumstances permit, and as I have koyach, as Ayson will help, we'll get back. We'll start all over. Yeah. Be more golden. Thank you. We can learn.
Make your super time. The grass.
Read postman somewhere that they asked what chapter is no daf aleph in Gemara. It says there is, it's the gate, because you have to know what you're learning before you learn it. This was before we learned. We started.
I think he has a Bitachon also. His mile is that he's in English. It was already mile. I know it's, mainstream of Yiddishkeit is in Hebrew. Yeah, but such was safe. If you're speaking to Americans, you have to speak to English. So, ich kann gerade Jiddisch mit euch, ob ihr wollt. Ich kann da gut Jiddisch. Bei mir ist kein nicht kein Unterschied zwischen reden Jiddisch oder Englisch. Ein bisschen Englisch ist ein bisschen geringer, ein bisschen. Aber ob ihr wollt, ich will sagen, schön. You versteht ihr? 100% right. Give me a brand, brother.